I think I just got an answer about that. Brad's question was, can the Trump case, where Judge Engoron has imposed nearly $500 million fine, nearly $500 million on Donald Trump, can that make its way to the Supreme Court? And the answer to that is that the Supreme Court deals with federal or constitutional questions. That's their obligation. So New York can handle this case all the way through the New York Court of Appeals, which is considered the highest court in New York State, the Court of Appeals. And then if Trump loses there, he can file an appeal that relates to federal or constitutional law. Now, that to me, that would be like an Eighth Amendment thing, right? The Eighth Amendment says you can't have cruel and unusual punishment inflicted upon you, and that includes excessive fines. You can't be excessively fined by your government. So that may be the very way that this gets before the United States Supreme Court, if he raises constitutional questions about what's happening here. And boy, if anybody's entitled to one of those, it would seem like Donald Trump is, given this case. So for now, those are the answers I was able to obtain. We'll keep on digging here. If we get some more answers, we'll share them with you. But man, Trump fighting with a system that really does not want him to be president of the United States again. Welcome to the Vince Colonnade Show. Glad to have you back with us. It is 5:08 now, and you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. I was seeing some footage out of New York City this past week. Crazy. St. Patrick's Cathedral, which is a beautiful Catholic cathedral right there in New York. Well, they had a funeral there this past week, and while they were doing it, it was a funeral for, so I guess what had happened was they had somebody who died, obviously, and we come to find out afterwards that the funeral was set up on a false pretense. They claimed that this person was a Catholic and that they needed to have a funeral in St. Patrick's, and then they lied about the person's gender, and it turned into a crazy left-wing rally going on right in the middle of the church with total disrespect for the entire church itself and the way that you're supposed to act inside of a church. It's crazy. And here with all of the details is the wonderful Mary Magaret Olohan. She's a reporter for the Daily Signal, and she joins us now. Mary Magaret, good to have you with us.
Great to be here, Vince.
So give me a sense, what happened at St. Patrick's? I've got some audio to help color in the lines here, but tell us what happened.
Yes, so on Thursday, there was a massive funeral for this LGBTQ activist, a man who identified as a woman who had spent his life working as a prostitute and trying to help New York decriminalize prostitution, which he did, trying to pave the way for prostitution all over the country, fighting back against any kind of law that might impede prostitution. And side note here, you see any media reports about him, his work will be described as sex work, but I think that's kind of offensive to use that phrasing to talk about something that we all know is prostitution. Anyways, this guy passed away at the age of 52, and he is thought of as a kind of leader of the LGBTQ movement, a trailblazer in terms of there. And so all these LGBTQ activists gathered at St. Patrick's Cathedral to hold a funeral for him.
Yes.
And like you were saying, they were kind of deceitful about how they told St. Patrick's what they were hosting and why. It sounds like it wasn't made clear that this man who went by Cecilia Gentili was identified as a transgender woman.
Yes.
But there's some confusion there, because it does sound like the Archdiocese had a little more information than they're letting on. The spokesman for the Archdiocese has made some rather conflicting statements. So it's not entirely clear what they knew and when they knew it.
Yeah, and this guy was also an atheist, too. Do I understand that correctly? I thought that was
He
a
was an
key
atheist.
detail.
Yeah, that's a very key detail, because, the Catholic Church has very specific rules. Anyone who's acquainted with the Catholic Church knows that it's not wishy-washy. It's very black and white, what you can and can't do, what are sins, what aren't sins, when you need to go to confession. And you are not supposed to have a funeral mass if you are not a Catholic. And now this activist was identified as transgender and also had said as recently as November 2023 that they were an atheist. So in the middle of the live stream, you can hear the priest having a conversation with someone, and it's not clear who he's talking to, but you can hear the priest saying, okay, we're just going to have a funeral service and not a mass. So it is clear that they figured out halfway through, maybe we shouldn't be doing this, which is pretty, given what was going on and the language being used to describe Gentili, the posters covered in foul language describing Gentili as Saint Cecilia and a whole slew of horrible adjectives that they were laughing and joking over. There were transgender activists kissing each other in the church, dancing, singing, changing the words to Ave Maria to Ave Cecilia, just making a complete mockery of this funeral, which we know is supposed to be a funeral service in a Catholic church, commemorates the dead and prays for their soul, because at that point you're wondering whether they went to heaven or purgatory or hell, as a Catholic church teaches. So this is not at all in keeping with what a Catholic funeral is supposed to be.
So you have these lefty radicals just casually defiling what is supposed to be a holy event, a Catholic funeral. And just to give you a sense of some of the work up here, you've got one of the activists at the wake for this person saying that they lied to the church, that up until this very hour, they don't actually know what's happening. Take a listen.
St. Patrick's Cathedral is having it. Here's a little secret, y'all. They still don't know she's trans.
Here's a little secret for all. They still don't know she's trans, everybody applauding wildly. When they get to the funeral service, here's what it sounded like on stage. Now, just be forewarned, the language a little salty here. I say on stage, on the altar. It's not a stage. On the altar, speaking from the ambo, this is what it sounded like.
This great Saint Cecilia, mother of all
yeah, a word that we are censoring, but normally means prostitute. So they were celebrating prostitution inside of this Catholic church.
They were not only celebrating it, they were glorifying it, and the laughter honestly gives me chills. And as a Catholic, it made me incredibly angry. I think Raymond Arroyo had a very impressive response to this on Fox News the other evening, where he called this a sacrilege. And I think that that's what most Catholics in this context would call it.
Yes.
This was sacrilegious, it was blasphemous, and it made a mockery of what a Catholic funeral is supposed to be.
Yeah, other serious faiths wouldn't stand for this. Catholics shouldn't. I think most Catholics are appalled by this. Here's the audio you're referring to. Raymond Arroyo reacting to this over on Fox.
For Catholics, this is a catastrophe. And how this happened at St. Patrick's Cathedral, we have to figure out who vetted this person. Okay, we know from the organizers they lied. They kept the fact that this was a trans activist and an atheist under wraps. Look, not everybody can get married at St. Patrick's or get a funeral at St. Patrick's. There are requirements. Canon law actually forbids someone who is, I quote, a manifest sinner who will create public scandal through a funeral. That's forbidden under canon law. So it's not come as you are. This is not a Broadway theater. This is not a club. This is a house of worship. You must come on the terms of the church. But we know Joseph Swilling, the spokesman for the Archdiocese, the New York Times says he was told Wednesday, the night before this, that this was a trans activist and who might be coming. That's a violation of church teaching and what the church holds dear. Everybody can come and repent and be a part of God's kingdom, but you can't come here and stage a protest like this.
Right, you can come and repent, but you can't come and make a mockery of the church and basically rub the church's face in it. I mean, that's the craziest part of this. And, and I saw that the Archdiocese seems to have been kind of scrambling now to respond to all of this. Sometimes you see institutions that just go quiet in the face of this. But I saw that in New York, they said on Sunday that they actually held a mass of, what do they call it, a mass of repentance or something over everything that went down. What happened here?
Yeah, they held a massive reparation, which they didn't publicize, which I found to be rather cowardly, Vince, because this other funeral service that took place, every big media outlet that there is appears to have known that mockery of a funeral took place. They had Time magazine there, they had the New York Times there, they did these huge photo spreads that are all over the internet now of men in thongs at this funeral service in St. Patrick's Cathedral.
Yes, and by the way,
but
I'm sorry, can we just emphasize this for a moment? That was also one of the features here that I didn't mention at the outset. There were people dressed in thongs and fishnet all over a church.
Yeah, fur, leather, the whole getup. And it was intended, at the end of the day, this was intended to be a massive, flashy, exploitative celebration of the end of this transgender activist's life as a big FU to the Catholic Church and to the people whom these transgender activists consider hateful. But what's ironic about all of this is that most of the Catholics, I don't think I know a single Catholic that wouldn't want someone who had died to be prayed for. They wouldn't want someone who had died to be held in loving memory and to be considered with dignity as a human being.
By the way, including this person.
Yes. Yeah. And so when they make a mockery of Catholics in this manner, it's showing a complete and fundamental misunderstanding of what the Catholic Church stands for. And it's just a very hateful deception that took place here. So I have a friend who went to Mass on Sunday, either Saturday night or Sunday after this all occurred. And Cardinal Dolan was saying that Mass. And my friend approached Cardinal Dolan and said, what's going on with all of this? Because keep in mind, Cardinal Dolan hasn't spoken out about this yet. And my friend said, what about that priest that said the funeral? But doesn't the priest, is anything going to be done to punish this priest for apparently letting this all happen? And Cardinal Dolan, based on what my friend told me, has a very confused understanding of the events that took place and seems to think that the priest behaved admirably in this situation. So I, for one, would like to hear from Cardinal Dolan. I would like some clarity on this matter, and I think that as the Archbishop of the Diocese of New York, he is a little tardy at this point, honestly, in not issuing a statement.
Yeah, and this took place, last week Thursday, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so we've had quite a few days in between, a full church weekend in between, and yet nothing from Cardinal Dolan. Well, I await that, and Mary Magaret, if anybody's going to get the answer out of him, it's probably going to be you, actually. So God bless you for it, and thank you very much for all of this coverage. It's important. We shouldn't just let it blow past because it feels like it's one of these things. Like if you just ignore it, things just keep getting worse. So call it out when it confronts you and demands you do that. Thank you for doing that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Vince.
The great Mary Magaret Olohan over at the Daily Signal covering all of this. Also, by the way, she's a visiting fellow at the Independent Women's Forum. All right, let's go to the phones. I've got Joe calling in from Occoquan in Virginia, of course, line 5. Joe, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Colonnade Show.
Hey, good afternoon. Thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to make a very brief comment about what happened at the St. Patrick's Cathedral.
Yes.
I think the priests and all the other religious leaders, the Catholic religious leaders, have the absolute right to get angrier. If they're not even angry, it sounded like they're not even angry at what happened. Because if they read their Bible, the only time that Jesus got angry was when he went into the temple and found thieves and prostitutes and all these other,
the money changers,
I'm air quoting, sinful humans inside the temple, making a mockery of what a sacred place should be. So I don't even understand why they're not even angry. You know, if they had that reparation mass that they held on Sunday, it should have been televised. They should have been on radio, on television, expressing anger, and it's got this wokeness has just gotten so bad that they're infiltrating even the churches.
Well, the obligation of the church is to make the world more godly, not to make the church more like the world, right? And
yeah, exactly. And I'm all about that. I mean, the church, where do sick people go?
Yeah.
Hospitals, right?
Yes.
Hospitals. That's exactly the analogy of sinful humans. We go to church so that we'd be sanctified. And sanctification takes a whole lifetime. But if you cross the line and these humans that went in there and made a mockery of the church,
yes,
did just that.
Yes,
You know,
and it's the
right,
priest's,
and they
it's
need
the
to be
priest's
called
right
out.
and obligation to stand up to that as it's happening there. You're totally right, Joe. It's a good point. Joe, thank you. I appreciate the call. Let me, I want to make sure to get another one in here. Sarah's calling in from Montgomery County, Maryland now, line 4. Sarah, you're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi. Well, there's the church and there's the church. There's been an infiltration for many years, and many of us Catholics have joined things like Save the Church or Leave the Church. There are lots of names for different things. People have taken their kids out of schools. People have left, but they are calling for an exorcism of the church, a real cleansing of it in New York. That probably didn't get out. I know they had the mass after, but I am not surprised that there's a lag in really doing something, because like Malachi Martin and John Paul said, the smoke of Satan has entered, and they call it Jesuits. They say lots of things. It's a reality. But we are the church. We were promised it would. We are the church. We will not fail. We cannot leave right now. Mm-hmm. Sometimes reason within is within. And Saint Cecilia is my patron saint, and I'm a little pissed about this. But
yes.
I don't like, and I work. Well, I won't say what I do. But anyway, I'm very familiar with funerals, let me say, and masses and high holy days and being there. And we have got to fight for our church, and we've got to fight the hierarchy very often. And I know you know it, Vince. I'm going to quit talking before I kill myself here.
Oh, no, you're doing great, Sarah. Thank you. I appreciate that call. And you know, and you're right on the fundamentals. With the church, there's too many people within the church, and you're right broadly to make these distinctions that have been rolling over on this. And I say the church, and not just the Catholic Church, all over the place. People of faith rolling over, allowing sort of the narcissistic earthly pursuits to dominate them. But I was reminded, you know, in the Catholic Church this weekend, the first reading of the Mass was a reminder that the rainbow itself was a symbol of God's covenant with humanity. It wasn't some sort of declaration of your sex life that's supposed to be given a month of obsession. That wasn't what it was at all. It was a very different symbol, a beautiful symbol, and an important one. All right, hold tight. A lot more ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show. All right, good afternoon to you. 536 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. A lot to get to here. I want to, you know, over on HBO, there's a comedian by the name of John Oliver who has another guy who has, I think, God-given talent that he's absolutely wasting on nonsense. Just total nonsense. And I don't mean like nonsense that's amusing. I mean nonsense that doesn't edify you in any way, whether it's comedy or otherwise, unfortunately. And this weekend, he did a whole thing. The left hates the fact that Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas exists. They hate everything about him. They hate that he's a black guy. They hate that he doesn't share views that they think black people are supposed to have. He hates that he wants to uplift all Americans of every skin color. They hate that about him. They hate it, and they want him off the United States Supreme Court because they view the court as a vehicle for advancing a left-wing policy agenda by circumventing Congress, the executive branch, and anybody else they have to circumvent. They want to control the court and use it as a vehicle for creating laws, not to establish whether or not something is legal federally, not to establish whether or not something is constitutional. They don't care about the actual role of the court. They've got bigger plans. So they hate Clarence Thomas because he's an impediment to that. And so they spend all their time obsessing over it. There's a constellation of left-wing organizations, a lot of them funded by all sorts of dark money, who spend all their time trying to create scandals for the least scandalous Supreme Court justice our country's probably ever had. He's just a smart man who makes smart assessments and is in such a great role for the country. And that's what they hate about him. So here's John Oliver last night. Now, look, I'm going to play the audio for you. This is Oliver basically trying to, I get it that it's shtick, but it sounds like he's sincere. He's making an offer on national television. He's making an offer to the tune of millions of dollars to Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, and he says, you have 30 days to resign. If you do, I will give you all of these things, including a tremendous amount of money. We've put it all together. We're going to give you this cash. Listen as John Oliver describes the bribe he has for a federal official.
Now, from stripping away women's rights to January 6th cases you definitely shouldn't be hearing, to potentially helping roll back decades of federal regulations. And you deserve a break, you know, away from the meanness of Washington, so you can be surrounded by the regular folks whose lives you've made demonstrably worse for decades now. And the good news is, I think we can help you there, because since your favourite mode of travel might be in need of an upgrade, we are excited to offer you this brand new, top-of-the-line Prevost Marathon motor coach.
Justice Thomas kind of famously loves getting into his RV and traveling across the country and meeting with Americans when he's not in session. Loves that. It's been well reported. And they're mocking him, so they bring out this top-of-the-line RV and say, we've purchased this for you. You can have this if you quit the court.
This beauty, Clarence, it's worth $2.4 million. And it's got a full bedroom. Yes, that is a king bed. 1.5 baths, a f***ing fireplace, 4 TVs, a washer-dryer, and I quote, a residential-sized fridge.
Okay, and then he goes on and he says, not only are we offering you this gigantic $2 million RV, we've got cash for you as well.
So that's the offer. $1 million a year, Clarence, and a brand new condo on wheels. And all you have to do in return is sign the contract and get the f*** off the Supreme Court. Talk it over with your totally best friend in the whole world. Because the clock starts now. 30 days, Clarence. Let's do this. That's our show. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week. Good night.
Okay, point one. What? I mean, that's a comedy show. I mean, honestly, this is what you're doing. Point two. Now, I do see some debate on this on the internet. Like, wow, you can't say he's bribing a federal official. He's not guilty of a federal crime. It's obviously a TV show. You can't say something like that. That's stupid. Okay. Fine. I don't actually know if this trips any criminal issues. It sounds like he's serious enough that he would be happy to engage in the bid if Clarence Thomas signed off on his document or whatever, his contract. Oh, we'll give him the money. Oh, look at us. We were able to chase him out. Obviously, they come up with this with the understanding that, well, there's no way that's going to happen. Justice Clarence Thomas would never do this. By the way, that's also a conceit that he's not corrupt, that he wouldn't be lured by an offer of millions of dollars from HBO to just quit the United States Supreme Court. They're kind of proving the point, aren't they? But here he is just making this claim in public. We're going to offer you millions of dollars, 30 days, sign the contract. We'll give you a $2 million RV, $1 million a year. All you got to do is within the next month, sign this contract. Now, let me just posit for you, as is often a useful mental exercise. What if Fox News' Jesse Waters did the same exact bit, but made the offer to Elena Kagan or Ketanji Brown Jackson, and went on his show this evening and said, we are making an offer. We've pulled the resources together. We're making an offer. We're going to give you several $1 million, including $1 million a year, to quit your job on the United States Supreme Court. Now, maybe he'd even save it. He'd save it for the next Trump presidency. He'd wait until Trump was president of the United States so he could make the pick. And he'd make this offer on national television and say, you have 30 days to sign this contract. Would the left prosecute Jesse Waters for that? Yes or no? Would they advance in some federal court somewhere charges that Jesse Waters was guilty of offering a bribe to a federal official? Come on. The answer to that is totally yes. 100% yes. They would definitely charge the guy. John Oliver, there will be nothing. Nobody's going to charge him with anything. And of course, the whole thing, it's obviously like a ridiculous bid. But does it trip any criminal wires? I don't know. But again, this is the kind of the textbook definition of it's not hypocrisy, it's hierarchy. John Oliver feels safe in doing this. Remember years back, there was he was the host of Meet the Press at the time. He had a really bad haircut. Forget his name. But he raised, this is before Chuck Todd. He brought a high-capacity magazine on set in Washington, D.C., and he held it up on Meet the Press. And no, it wasn't Tim Russert. Hold up. I'm gonna get it right now. It was David Gregory. So let me go back in time. So David Gregory, the interim host. NBC's David Gregory. This is January of 2013. NBC's David Gregory won't be charged for showing Ammo magazine. This is NPR reporting at the time. NBC News' David Gregory displayed what he said was a high-capacity ammunition magazine on Meet the Press last month, and it prompted Washington, D.C. law enforcement officials to investigate whether he had broken a city law, which, by the way, he did. Reported December 26th of that year, D.C.'s official code says in part, quote, no person in the district shall possess, sell, or transfer any large-capacity ammunition feeding device, regardless of whether the device is attached to a firearm. But on Friday, D.C. prosecutors announced Gregory would not be arrested or charged with a crime. So the guy goes on national television. He breaks a law on national TV. He's sitting right square in the middle of Washington, D.C. He is not even allowed to possess a high-capacity magazine at the time. He raises it on TV, waves it around as an effort to try and get said device banned. And then he was not charged with committing a crime, even though he was caught in 4K committing a crime. Because it's not hypocrisy, it's hierarchy. So John Oliver, if he did break a law last night, he gets away with it. Totally fine, because he's a lefty. And all of the prosecutors who would even contemplate going after a guy like that for doing something like that on television are lefties. So that's how this is going to end up. But just remarkable. Boy, they really hate Clarence Thomas, don't they? They despise him. They despise him. And as usual with the left, the more they hate you, the more you're in the right. Clarence Thomas, you want to talk about sainthood? That guy's headed for it. His detractors, boy, they're something else. Meanwhile, elsewhere on television, there was a funny moment. The NBA All-Star Game was this weekend. I don't know if you've watched it or not. I did not watch it. I tried to watch it for a half second, got distracted, moved on to other things. Turns out I didn't miss a good competitive game or anything. You ready for the final score of the NBA All-Star Game? Corey, have you seen this, what the final score was from this weekend? Have you ever heard of a basketball score that ended 211 to 186? 211 points in a single basketball game for a single team. The Eastern Conference set the all-time scoring record. The first team to surpass 200 points, 211 to 186. This means, without watching a single second of this, that there was no defense the entire game. Nobody played defense in this thing. So apparently Adam Silver is who runs the NBA, the commissioner. He's upset about all of this. He's upset that nobody wants to play defense. It's not really surprising. These guys are all paid a bajillion dollars. Nobody wants to get injured. They don't really feel like it. Their heart's not in it. They don't care. So they just go out there and everyone just scores 1 million points and nobody gets in each other's way. So that's great entertainment too, right? Man, so 211 to 186. But in the midst of all the coverage, Charles Barkley was doing some commentary, and they were talking about the game, and Barkley took a shot at San Francisco that's totally true. He was talking about San Francisco, and here's what he said. And listen to the panel freak out as Charles Barkley starts telling the truth about what was once one of America's prettiest cities.
Hey, Reggie. Yes? If you had a chance of being cold or being around a bunch of homeless crooks in San Francisco, when you... Oh, that's crazy. You're not welcome. They're not letting you in. You're not welcome.
We love San Francisco.
No, we don't.
Yes, we do.
You can't even walk around down there.
Yes, you can walk around.
Yeah, with a bulletproof bag.
Hey, Taylor. Chuck, you live in Philadelphia, Chuck.
I live in Arizona.
Microphone says...
So they were in Indiana last night for this game, and everyone's like complaining about how cold it is and how it could have been in San Francisco. And it's like, who wants to be there? I'd rather be here in the cold than walking through crime-infested, homeless encampment, poop on the streets, San Francisco. Not a chance. And Charles Barkley, You gotta. This is the part of Charles Barkley I like. Charles Barkley drives me crazy too because he's got like other stupid like low IQ assessment of Republicans, and he's like constantly. He says a lot of dumb things, but then he also has kind of like, just like, I don't know. It's perfect. So some of what he says is just hilariously honest, and this is one of those moments. And I love the panel. Everyone's like, oh no, San Francisco's great. You can totally walk around. Yeah, sure. Okay, you do it first. Get a camera out. We'll follow you around. You tell us what a great time you're having walking around San Francisco. Anybody you talk to about what's going on in San Francisco is like, it's a nightmare. I used to love that city. It's been destroyed. That's where they've got, isn't Twitter based out of San Fran? Elon Musk has been complaining about Twitter HQ and it's in San Francisco, California. Twitter is. He says it is a nightmare everywhere around Twitter, where Twitter's headquarters are, which they've changed to X now. He said it's a total nightmare. And I guess they had contemplated them moving the headquarters. They really should just get out of California. And Elon Musk has moved operations, all sorts of operations, Tesla to Texas, things like this. But it's bad. It's bad news. And this goes back to what Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank was saying. I was playing earlier. He's calling these states where they're awful to live because of what Democrats have done to them, loser states. California is a loser state, a once beautiful state destroyed by Democrats. Can you believe that California produced Governor Ronald Reagan? And what has it become since? Not good. Not good. They're driving people out. Just look at the prices of U-Hauls to flee the state. I've been meaning to tell you, Trump at SneakerCon this weekend in Philadelphia, a big convention for, sneakers, announced a line of Trump-branded sneakers. They sold out in 2 hours flat.
I just want to tell you, I've wanted to do this for a long time. I have some incredible people that work with me on things, and they came up with this, and this is something I've been talking about for 12 years, 13 years, and I think it's going to be a big success.
The Never Surrender high-top sneaker. It sold for $399 a pair. They are gold. Gold. When I think gold shoes, I think back to Michael Johnson's record run in the Olympics back in the mid-'90s. These are a little different. They're not running shoes. They look more like a basketball shoe. They're pretty cool. They got the American flag emblazoned on the heel. They're gold. They're white kind of around the edge of the sole and red on the bottom, almost like those fancy high heels, Louboutins. Very cool-looking shoe. Sold out in 2 hours.
Your influencers have been very positive. They've been real influences, and they love it, and they love what we've done. That's the real deal. That's the real deal. And
he's holding the shoe up.
We appreciate it. We really appreciate it. More than anything else, I appreciate the turnout, because they say they've never had a turnout like this. And
yeah, whoever set the PA system wasn't ready for the feedback for whatever reason. Got to work on your sound there. But there were also like people. There were people cheering, people booing. There was like a very mixed crowd. It was hilarious. In fact, at one point, a chant of "F Joe Biden" started breaking out, and there are lefties online today who are convinced that they were chanting "Let's go Biden." They're not reading the room. They should read the room. What's going on there? All right, that's about all the time we have today. I've got so much other great audio as always. So many great things to get to. Did you see the Harvard researcher who concluded that police shootings show no racial disparity whatsoever at all, and the left has been trying to destroy him for his findings? He said, I kept on researching it, and then I would hire new researchers to check the data again. It kept on coming out there was no racial disparity. The left was furious that he ran that report. That's the left for you. Hey, the great one, Mark Levin, up next, right here on President's Day here on WMAL.